The streets were never meant to hold that kind of grief, yet they did. Banners soaked in rain and tears fluttered against the wind like broken wings, their ink smeared but their message burning brighter than any storm could extinguish. Justice for Yu Menglong. The first gathering had been quiet, hesitant even. A handful of fans, their hands clutching photographs of his smile, that gentle smile that once lit up dramas, interviews, and entire hearts. They had lit candles and placed white lilies on the pavement outside the studio where his name had last been whispered. At first, people passed by with curious glances, some with pity, others with indifference. But pain, when shared, becomes contagious. Within days, that handful became hundreds. Within weeks, it became thousands. It wasn't just fans anymore. It was mothers who saw their children in him, young men who envied his courage, students who listened to his songs during lonely nights of studying, workers who replayed his dramas to soothe aching bodies after long shifts. His life had been a thread stitched quietly into theirs, and when it snapped, the fabric of their own worlds tore open. Everywhere, the same questions hung in the air like thunder waiting to break. Why? How? What are they hiding? The official report said cardiac arrest. Simple. Final. Neat. But grief has a way of sniffing out lies, and love makes people refuse to accept easy answers. They had seen the bruises in blurred hospital photos, the contradictions in statements, the silence of people who once claimed to be his friends. They had watched the world move on, but they refused to. One rainy evening, a girl named Lien stood on the steps of a government building, soaked to the skin, clutching her phone. She was trembling, not from the cold but from the fire inside her. She pressed play. His voice filled the square. A song he had once sung about dreams, about holding on even when the night seemed endless. The crowd went silent, their candles flickering as if the flames themselves paused to listen. By the end of the song, Lien's tears had mixed with the rain. She whispered into the microphone, "They want us to forget. But how can we forget someone who gave us so much light?" A roar rose from the people, low, steady, like the earth itself demanding truth. From that moment, the protests grew wings. The streets became a sea of umbrellas, painted not in color but in slogans, pleas, demands. Fans painted his face on walls, his eyes too alive to belong to the dead. Others printed leaflets comparing reports, drawing arrows between inconsistencies. University students organized sit-ins, chanting his name until professors joined them. Street performers sang his songs and donated the coins tossed into their hats to fund the movement. And yet, it was never just about justice. It was about grief turning into unity, pain transforming into purpose. Parents held their children tighter, lovers leaned closer, strangers shared umbrellas. His death had carved a hollow, but inside that hollow bloomed a garden of resistance. But every movement comes with a cost. The police began patrolling. Tear gas replaced the scent of lilies. Yet the more they tried to silence the voices, the louder they grew. Lien herself was pushed to the ground one night, her candle smashed, but even as she coughed through smoke, she screamed his name. That scream was caught on camera, shared online, replayed millions of times. It became a symbol, the sound of love refusing to bow to power. Videos went viral, grandmothers in wheelchairs raising their fists, children holding placards drawn with crayons, crowds kneeling in unison and chanting his name under the moonlight. Hashtags spread like wildfire, crossing oceans, reaching fans in countries that had never known his name before. Justice was no longer a local cry, it had become global. Inside darkened rooms, officials whispered. Executives tightened their suits. Statements were drafted and shredded. Behind every curtain, there was fear, not of truth, but of the people who demanded it. But the fans, they were not afraid anymore. One unforgettable night, the square was filled beyond measure. Tens of thousands stood shoulder to shoulder, candles glowing like fallen stars. A giant screen flickered on, not from organizers, but from an unknown source. It played one of his final interviews. He was smiling, shy as always, speaking about how he wanted to grow old on screen, to give people stories that healed them. The crowd went still. Every word was a dagger, every smile a wound. When the video ended, silence blanketed the night. And then, like thunder breaking, a chant rose. Menglong lives in us. Justice for Yu Menglong. Over and over until the very ground shook. People wept openly, strangers holding each other. In that moment, it wasn't protest, it was communion. His life had ended, but his soul was reborn in every trembling voice. But grief does not end in a single night. The movement continued, sometimes hopeful, sometimes weary. Families of fans clashed, jobs were lost, friendships tested. Not everyone believed in fighting. Some wanted peace, silence, acceptance. But those who had once seen his light could not extinguish it from their hearts. One winter morning, months after the first candle was lit, Lien returned to the steps of the government building. Snow drifted down, quiet, almost merciful. She placed a single lily on the frozen ground. Around her, others began doing the same. No banners, no chants. Just flowers, thousands of them, covering the stairs in white. For once, even the guards did not stop them. The image spread across the world. A staircase turned into a river of lilies, each petal whispering the same truth. Asterisk, we remember. We will not forget. We will not stop. Asterisk. And though no statement had yet been released, though no official dared speak his name, something shifted. For the first time, silence no longer belonged to power. It belonged to the people, to their unbroken love, their unyielding demand. Yu Menglong was gone. But his fans had carved a monument not of stone, but of memory, louder and stronger than anything built by hands. And as the snow fell on the lilies, as the candles continued to burn against the wind, one thing was undeniable. Justice was no longer a question. It was a promise. A promise carried in chants, in tears, in songs, in silence. A promise that would echo through every street he had once walked. A promise that love, when true, never dies. The lilies stayed for weeks. Their petals browned and curled under the cold, but still the fans came to replace them. The steps became a cycle of mourning and renewal, each flower a vow, each candle a heartbeat that refused to fade. But grief is never stagnant. It moves. It grows restless. And soon, the quiet protest of lilies became something larger, something impossible to ignore. A group of young filmmakers, fans who had once admired Yu Menglong's subtle performances, began to document the protests. With borrowed cameras and shaky hands, they captured the trembling fury in tear-streaked faces, the crackle of megaphones, the haunting silence of vigils where thousands stood without a sound. Their short film spread online. Millions watched, millions cried, millions began asking questions once buried under official statements. And then came the night that would never be forgotten. The square was filled again, not with lilies this time but with voices. A cold wind slashed across the city, but no one moved. They had gathered under the watchful eyes of police barricades, their chants echoing against buildings. Suddenly, a screen lit up again, not an interview this time, but footage no one had seen before. Grainy, unsteady, like it had been hidden and smuggled out. Yu Menglong walking through a corridor. A shadow following. His laughter echoing, suddenly cut short. The clip ended before answers could be found, but the silence it left behind was louder than any chant. Gasps, sobs, fury, every emotion erupted at once. The crowd surged forward. Police lines wavered. For a heartbeat, chaos trembled on the edge of breaking. But then, from somewhere within the sea of people, a voice rose. Lien. Her voice cracked but carried, raw and undeniable. Do not fight with fists, fight with love. That is what he gave us. That is what they can never take away. The words rippled outward. The anger softened, transformed. Instead of pushing forward, the crowd knelt. Tens of thousands on their knees, heads bowed, candles raised high. Police officers shifted uncomfortably, their shields glinting under the candlelight. Some turned away, some lowered their eyes. The image swept across social media. A kneeling army of grief. A nation on its knees, not in surrender but in defiance. Officials scrambled. News anchors faltered. They could no longer dismiss it as a fleeting fan movement. It was too vast, too human, too filled with love to be painted as reckless. Yet with recognition came danger. Organizers were taken in for questioning. Online posts were erased faster than they were uploaded. Lien herself was followed, her phone tapped, her family warned. But each attempt at silence only deepened the fury. Each silenced voice birthed 10 more. And still, Yu Menglong's smile lingered everywhere, graffitied on alleys, printed on t-shirts, projected onto skyscrapers in acts of midnight rebellion. His image became not just memory but resistance. The protests grew more creative. Fans carried mirrors instead of banners, reflecting the city lights into the eyes of those in power, a wordless reminder that truth could not be hidden. Others released white balloons into the sky, each tied with handwritten notes. Asterisk, we love you. We remember you. We will not stop. Asterisk, the balloons drifted over rooftops and disappeared into the night, as though carrying their cries directly to him. One evening, an old man approached the crowd. He carried no candle, no sign, only a small transistor radio. His hands trembled as he tuned it. The crackling static gave way to a song, Yu Menglong's voice, soft, trembling, alive. The crowd froze. Many collapsed where they stood, sobbing openly, unable to bear the fragile beauty of it. It was as though he had returned for a moment, speaking to them through the airwaves, reminding them why they fought. That night, no one went home. They stayed under the stars, lying on cold concrete, clutching each other's hands. A vigil turned into a camp into a community. People shared food, blankets, stories. Strangers became family, united by loss and by love. But every light casts a shadow. Within weeks, the camp was cleared. Bulldozers roared, shields pressed forward. Candles were trampled, flowers shredded. Lien was among those dragged away, her screams echoing long after the square fell silent. Videos of her arrest spread online, sparking outrage not just among fans but among ordinary citizens who had never cared about celebrity gossip. For the first time, this was no longer just about Yu Menglong. It was about freedom, about dignity, about the right to demand truth. And so the protests multiplied. Markets, classrooms, factories. His name was spoken everywhere, sometimes whispered, sometimes shouted. His face appeared not only in fan gatherings but in art galleries, murals, theater plays. He had become more than himself. He had become a symbol. Months passed. Seasons changed. Snow melted into spring. And still the movement thrived, scarred but unbroken. Lien was released, thinner, quieter, but her eyes held the same fire. She stood again on the steps, voice trembling but unyielding. They thought they could silence us. But silence is just another language. And we will keep speaking it until justice is done. Tears streamed down faces as she spoke. Not just because of her courage, but because they knew what she said was true. Justice had not yet come. The answers were still buried. But the movement had become unstoppable, an ocean too vast to be contained. Yu Menglong's life, cut short, had sparked something immortal. And as the sun rose over the city, casting golden light on tired faces and broken banners, one truth was clear. He lived on. In their chants, in their silence, in their love. And one day, whether through whispers or through thunder, justice would come.